Good morning, everyone. I am George Herizer, today's worship associate. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Lancaster. This month is Black History Month. We are also in the Christian season of Lent, a time of preparing for the coming of Easter. Here at UUCL, we come together to nourish the spirit, connect in love, and act for justice. We welcome you this morning just as you are, whatever your heritage, whatever your faith, whomever you love, however you identify. Today, you are a part of this spiritual community. And if this is your first time here, may you soon discover this is also your spiritual community. As has become our custom, let's give a special welcome to all those who are joining the service this morning in Zoom. We invite those on Zoom to turn your cameras on and share a wave together. And everyone here in the sanctuary, if we wave to the camera in the back there, to send our greetings to them. We welcome all ages in the sanctuary today. Our playroom in the adjoining building across here is open for children if parents would like to bring their children there now, or may leave for programming after our first hymn, Meditation on Breathing. There's also a table with activities for busy hands of all ages in the Women's Memorial Room opposite me in the sanctuary back there. Next, I would like to welcome Darcy Pollock, a member of our Board of Trustees, to the podium.
Thank you, George. We are gathered on the land once inhabited by people known as the Susquehannock and the Conestoga, and ancient peoples long gone before them. We acknowledge the violent legacies of genocide, displacement, and settlement that led us to being here today, and remind ourselves to live humbly in relation with this land and with all of the indigenous peoples still living and loving on this continent. May we also acknowledge that the wealth and foundation of the United States was built upon the labor and toil of enslaved people. Many indigenous people will say, all are relatives. May we live into this truth and aspiration together. And now please welcome our speaker today, Ed Sullivan, and our own Andrew Probolis.
In gratitude, we offer this incense to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space and time, teaching and living the way of awareness in the very midst of suffering and confusion. Shakyamuni Buddha, the Enlightened One, to whom we bow in gratitude, showing the way fearlessly and compassionately, the stream of ancestral teachers, to whom we bow in gratitude. Gatha of Atonement. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, body, mouth, and thought. Now I atone for it all.
Good morning. So my name is Ed Sangetsu Sullivan, or Ed Sullivan, or just Ed. I go by a variety of names. Sometimes my wife calls me by some other names, but we won't go into that today. So I'm the principal teacher here at the Red Rose Sangha, and I'm an ordained Zen Buddhist priest and a teacher or sensei in the White Plum lineage of Zen, which traces its origins back to the Buddha. My associate today is a member of your congregation, whom you probably know, Dr. Andy Daiji Probalis. He's a longtime practitioner of Zen and a senior member of our community, or Sangha, as we often say. A few weeks ago, Reverend Pat invited us to participate in your Sunday service. It's been a while since we've done that. I think about 5 years or so, pre-pandemic. Over coffee, we discussed some possibilities in terms of formats, and we decided to provide you with a sampler of the liturgy and chants that we typically do every Sunday evening here at 6 o'clock downstairs. I'll use some of the lines from the chants to give you a taste of what Zen Buddhism is about. So what does a typical Sunday morning consist of? Or rather, Sunday evening? Briefly, we begin with an invocation similar to what you saw and a lighting of incense. We do a few chants, and then we meditate for 30 minutes. Then we do what's called a walking meditation, or kinhin, and then I'll give a talk called a Dharma talk, or one of our senior students, like Andy, will give a talk. This is followed by another 30 minutes of meditation. Then we finish with a few brief chants. So that's the general format of what goes on a Sunday. All told, we spend about an hour every Sunday meditating. Newcomers who are inexperienced with Zen meditation, well, we give them a half hour of instruction, and then they can join the community and listen to our Dharma talk and sit with that final round for 30 minutes. So that's what we do every Sunday night in the basement. We're very quiet. In fact, the emphasis in Zen is clearly on meditation. It is meditation which distinguishes Zen from many of the other Buddhist sects. Why do we meditate? Well, I'm sure many of you have read about the physical and mental health benefits that accrue to those who have a daily meditation practice. And certainly Zen practitioners enjoy these benefits, but that's not the principal reason why we meditate. We meditate to wake up and to be present for our lives. Let me tell you a short tale about the Buddha shortly after his great enlightenment. One day he was walking through a village in northern India, and something must have seemed unusual about him because the villagers stopped him. And they asked him if he was a god. And he said, no. Are you an angel or a deva? Again, he replied, no. A magician, perhaps, or a wizard? No. Are you a man? He said, no. Exasperated, they asked him, well, what are you? And he said, I am awake. Henceforth, he became known as the Buddha, which means the awakened one. That's why we meditate, to wake up. We spend most of our lives really half awake, lost in our thoughts about what we've done or what we're going to do. In other words, we're barely aware of what's happening in our lives at the present moment. Now, there's nothing wrong with thinking about the past or planning for the future. However, if 95% of your day is lost in those thoughts, you can go through a day barely aware that you have lived. Now, I could spend a couple of hours elaborating on just what I've said. But in Zen, we say talk is cheap. So what I'd like to do is, for just a couple of minutes, take you through a guided meditation to help us quiet our minds a little bit. So if you would humor me and be willing to give it a go, what I'd like you to do is please sit up straight and put your both feet on the floor. Put your hands on your lap comfortably and close your eyes. Now, begin breathing normally, but notice your breath. Are your breaths short and shallow? Perhaps they're calm and relaxed. Take a few moments just to notice each breath. Now notice where in your body you actually feel your breath. Is it in your throat, your chest? Perhaps it's in the rising and falling of your abdomen. Locate that spot where you feel your breath and try to stay at that spot with your breath. Eventually, your mind will start wandering, and that's okay. Maybe you're thinking, am I doing this right? Maybe you're thinking about having some coffee after the service. And that's okay too. Just notice when your mind has wandered from your breath. Then come back to your breathing and that spot, that focal point, without reproach. Okay, when you're ready, just slowly open your eyes. Maybe move your neck around from side to side. Congratulations, you have just meditated. People often tell me that they can't meditate. Their minds are too active and they just can't stop thinking. This is a mistaken view of meditation. It's not about stopping your mind from thinking. You can't do it. Our brains are designed to pump out thoughts just like our hearts are designed to pump out blood. I can only promise you this. While meditating, you'll become more aware of your thoughts. If you practice diligently, you might come to a startling conclusion. You are not your thoughts. You'll realize you don't have to believe everything you think. In Zen, we don't ask you to believe this on faith. You just have to meditate for a while and see for yourself. Maybe that's true. Finally, if you develop a daily practice, it will calm you down. Yeah. And sometimes for a few brief moments, slow down your thinking. And if you're at a retreat and been meditating for a while, well, yeah, your thoughts may actually stop for a few moments. Now, I'm not selling snake oil here, okay? This doesn't happen overnight, and it comes with practice, lots of practice. Again, I could spend at least an hour or two exploring a lot of what I have just said, but today is not the day to do that. If you have any questions, Andy and I will be downstairs for a coffee after the service, and I'll be the one eating donuts. I brought 4 dozen donuts. Well, there used to be 4 dozen donuts. But we're not going to go into that today. Now, the title of this talk is a Zen sampler. And I'd like to give you a feel for what Zen is all about by examining a few key phrases in the chant sheet, which was in your handout that was given. And as you can see, we began with an invocation and a chant of atonement. And there are several things within those lines that I'd like to emphasize. If you look at the second line of the invocation, you'll see that we offer incense to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Buddhists generally believe that throughout history there have been many Buddhas. Not just the one we typically think about or talk about, Siddhartha Gautama or Shakyamuni Buddha, whose statue we have on our little altar. We also mention bodhisattvas. According to Buddhist orthodoxy, and Zen doesn't fit very well with orthodoxy. I'll put that right out front. But according to Buddhist orthodoxy, a bodhisattva is an enlightened being who vows to save all other beings from suffering. Talk about a tough vow. Sometimes, however, bodhisattvas are interpreted as archetypes. That's the one I prefer.
manifesting particular qualities, such as loving kindness or compassion. In this interpretation, in this instance, we can think of them as serving as role models to inspire us. Just that. Now, if we look at that verse of atonement on your sheet, you'll see atonement is an interesting word. Zen doesn't talk about sin. Rather, we talk about skillful and unskillful actions. What's a skillful action? It's an act that reduces suffering in the world. An unskillful action increases suffering. All actions have karmic consequences. Karma, simply explained, would be the law of cause and effect. And it's found in virtually every major religion. Paul, in his letter to the Galatians, said, "As you sow, so shall you reap." It's hard to argue with that concept of karma. For example, if you make a living robbing banks, sooner or later you're going to get caught and wind up in prison. That's karma. So who are we making atonement to? We're basically apologizing to all beings on whom we have afflicted suffering. Please note, we're not making atonement to a god. Buddhism is a non-theistic religion. We have no such teachings about a supreme being. So next, I hope you'll join me in a recitation of our practice of gratitude, and then I'd like to explain a few things about that. Andy, would you lead us in that?
Practice of gratitude. I
offer my gratitude for the people, animals, plants, insects, creatures of the sky and sea, air and water, fire and earth, and all for whose joyful exertion blesses my life every day. I offer my gratitude for the care and labor of 1,000 generations of elders and ancestors who came before me. I offer my gratitude for the safety and well-being I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the blessings of this earth I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the family and friends I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the teachings and lessons I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the life I have been given. May we awaken from forgetfulness and realize our true home. Now, I'm sure some of you have heard of this practice of gratitude. It's taught in a variety of places. Those who might practice mindfulness meditation, you've probably encountered it there. And there are a variety of ways of doing this. Some people keep a spiritual journal and write 3 things that they are grateful for every day. It may sound kind of corny, but after you've done it for a month and you go back and you start reading it, it wakes you up. That's what we're after in Zen. They may be small, mundane things, like eating a sandwich for lunch, or even being grateful for having a sandwich to eat. Another might be appreciating the weather on a beautiful day. Some people like to practice gratitude by listing 3 things that occurred during the day before going to sleep. It's a wonderful way to set an intention in your mind before you fall off to sleep. Maybe you're simply grateful for having a safe place to sleep. By recalling the small, commonplace occurrences of daily existence, I've become more appreciative of my life. In fact, my favorite line in that particular chant is, "I offer my gratitude for the life I have been given." Through the practice of gratitude, I've learned to take fewer things for granted. Then we typically, on a Sunday night, close our services with 2 vows, or chants. The first one is sometimes called, the 4 vows. They are the vows of a bodhisattva. I'll go over them and explain to you some of the meaning behind them. And you'll notice as vows go, they're pretty outrageous. Outrageous in the sense that they are impossible to keep. And we know that they're impossible to keep. We like to set the bar high in Zen. Though the many beings are without number, I vow to save them. Well, a lot of beings talk about a vow. What do we mean in Zen when we talk about saving all beings? Save them from what? From suffering. At the most fundamental level, it means working to reduce suffering in this world. Toward the end of his life, the Buddha succinctly summarized his teachings. He had, by all accounts, about a 45-year ministry. And he said, "Throughout my life, I've taught one thing and one thing only: how to end suffering." Through his teachings, which we really don't have time to explore today, he provided a roadmap on how to do that. He had very concrete suggestions. Maybe someday, if you invite me back, I'll talk about those. But the next vow says, "Though greed, anger, and ignorance rise endlessly, I vow to cut them off." Greed, anger, and ignorance are called the 3 poisons because they poison our lives. Greed is the primary source of suffering, of our suffering. How so? We desperately try to hold on to things that are impermanent. It can't be done. Failure to recognize this fact easily morphs into anger and other unskillful acts, which in turn cause more suffering. However, of the three poisons, ignorance is considered the worst. The argument being that if we were wise enough to recognize the impermanent nature of all things, we wouldn't begin to hold things so tightly. We'd begin to loosen our grip. And as you loosen your grip, your suffering diminishes. We don't ask you to believe that. We say, try it for a while and see for yourself. There is a story, again, about the Buddha coming to a village in India, and the villagers stopped him and they said, you know, we have basically preachers coming through our village all the time, telling us how to live, what we should do, what we should not do. How do we know, and why should we believe anything you say? Now here's where the Buddha said something I found extraordinary, which began to hook me on Buddhism. He said, listen to what these folks have to say and see if it squares with your own experience. Don't just believe anyone because they said something, and that includes me. You don't hear many preachers say that. So the essence of Buddhism is, well, you know, give it a test drive. See if it works for you. If it does, so much the better. If it doesn't, well, no harm, no foul. But failure to recognize this impermanence, which leads to more unskillful acts, which causes more suffering, is the knot we're trying to untie. If we begin to recognize the impermanent nature of existence, we will begin to suffer less. At least, that's been my experience, but definitely don't take my word for it. Now, our next vow says, though the Dharma is vast and fathomless, I vow to understand it. In this instance, we can think of the Dharma as being the teachings of the Buddha. It can have a variety of meanings, but in this context, it's the teachings of the Buddha. Essentially, we're vowing to reduce our own ignorance, the worst poison. This is the key for our path to liberation. Those who have deeply penetrated the Dharma are sometimes called enlightened. But here's the rub. Reality is boundless. We can never know enough. Yes, in Zen we acknowledge enlightenment experiences. We even have names for it like Satori and Kensho. But we understand that there's so much more to realize. As I like to say to those I teach, once you think you got it, you don't got it. So this leads us to the final vow, which builds off of the last vow. Though the Buddha's way is beyond attainment, I vow to embody it fully. It's an acknowledgement that we'll never be perfect, as hard as we try.
And then we'll fail again. But that doesn't matter. You just do the best you can and live your life as skillfully as you can. Finally, we end with a morning or evening gatha. And the morning Gatha, I'll read it to you. Let me respectfully remind you, life and death are of supreme importance. Time passes swiftly by, and opportunity is lost. Each of us should strive to awaken. Awaken, take heed. Today your life is shorter by one day. Do not squander your life. I like this chant very much. And you may have a feeling that in Zen we don't really sugarcoat things. The chant is edgy, and it's kind of like dumping a bucket of cold water on your head. Many of the time on an extended retreat, we will chant a version of this at the very end of the night before retiring. And by then, we're pretty tired. And then we chant this thing here. And again, well, it's kind of encouraging. Those of us who follow some spiritual path are often pursuing what we call in Zen the great matter of life and death. It's what drove Siddhartha to leave his kingdom and to eventually become a Buddha. The chant reminds us, in not a very subtle way, that yes, one day we will die. And each day brings us a little bit closer. So use your time wisely. Now, I know this is a sobering talk on a beautiful Sunday morning. So let me leave you with my favorite poem by the Sufi mystic Rumi. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. I love that line. Come, even if you have broken your vow 100 times, come yet again. Come, come. Thank you.
At this time in the service, may we hold the joys, sorrows, and complex truths that rest on our hearts this morning. Eli will be releasing the stones as I mention some joys and sorrows out loud, and then I will be inviting you to do the same as well in silence if you wish. A stone of concern and care for all those who find themselves in places of open conflict, whether at home or in one of the battles in nations going on right now in the world. We continue to hope for a day when we are not in fear of the specter of war. A stone of care and healing as we think of Cheryl, who for now is at skilled nursing at Moravian Manor. A stone of joy and celebration that our new facilities coordinator, Rock, will be starting tomorrow. And a stone of celebration for another awesome open mic night that we had on Friday. I now invite you, as you are able, in silence, to come forward and plant stones in the sand to mark the joys and concerns that rest in your hearts and on your minds. We may imagine the stones are like seeds that will sprout and spread love, joy, and healing. So we are doing the hymn 1031, which is filled with loving kindness, and Eli will be leading us in that.
be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole.
This is a time in our service when we will pass the plate and accept your offerings. You may also go onto our website with the block in your program and make a donation online. A portion of the offering this month will be shared with the Benchmark program. Founded to transform the way our community's most vulnerable yet promising population is served, the underserved youth. Benchmark's gym, team, and scope of impact has expanded since its founding in 2014, but the core remains the same: to build our underserved youth into community leaders. While the plates are passed, I will be making some announcements, so the plates may now be started. Do look at our weekly email letters, the love notes for Week Needs to Know, and events as UUCL, as well as our Facebook page and website calendar. To sign up for the newsletter, look to our website or contact our office. Today, following the service, we will hold a town hall meeting about the sanctuary updates. There will be a short coffee hour with donuts from the Red Rose Sangha, as Ed had said. And next Sunday, affiliated community minister, the Reverend Elizabeth Shuba, will be preaching on fear and scarcity versus hope and generosity. We are grateful for your gifts freely given. Let us join together now to read in unison the affirmation of faith, which is found in the front page of your gray hymnals, and it will also appear on our screen as well for those in the Zoom. We will do that first in English and then in Spanish. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ofrenda. Este es nuestro gran pacto, el convivir unidos en paz, el buscar la verdad en amor y ayudarnos unos a los otros. Our closing words are adapted from the Reverend J. Abernathy, Jr. Let us seek the quiet and the calm. Let us lay aside our loud calling. Let us lay aside our struggle. Speak softly. Let us listen to the melodies that recall other proportions. Our moments tarry not with us. Let us then seek the dimensions that endure, beyond all nowness and here-ness, beyond all requirements and all particularity. Let us speak softly that we may hear. Let us begin this day with calm and quiet at our center. Go in love, go in peace, go in joy. May you be well and whole. May it be so.